All right, what is up? So this is a recording for anyone who missed the Blockout Tools workshop on 8:30 at 7 p.m. So we're just gonna run through it. This is essentially the Blockout Tools. Okay, so the key points of the workshop, and you can do this in the recording. You can do this on your own if you would like. I actually highly recommend you do to get some reps in with the tool. Is we're gonna figure out how to download and add the Blockout Tools plugin to a project. So if you don't already have it, uh, this will be something you can do because the Kyrie Studios actually has a link to it. So even if you didn't buy the tool, you still have access to it on your individual projects. So I'm going to show you how to do that. We're also going to cover a few of the blueprints. So this is going to be a bit extra in depth than we went in with the workshop. And then we're going to do a little activity. We're going to make a little Lego house. Okay, so first things first, we're going to download the plugin and we're going to add it to the project. So this is the Google file. I have two things I'm going to want you to download. The first is going to be the plugin, and this next one is going to be the image. Now, I already linked these, so I'm just going to pull over my Discord here. So I actually have the in the level designers little chat box. If you go to the bottom and you scroll up a little bit, you'll see at yesterday at 6:56 p.m. I linked the plugin and the image guide. So I'm actually going to open that, and this is gonna pop up. I'm gonna go back to my Discord, and then I'm gonna actually open the image guide, and this is the guide for the activity. So we essentially have these two things. We can download these by going to the top right in this little corner, and we can just hit download, and then magically it'll download. So this one, the Blockout tools may take a little bit longer to download, um, but we'll just let it do its thing. And then for the workshop image, we can just download it. I guess it is just going to take a second. And if you click on this, your downloads, you'll see that you actually have them downloaded. Now, I actually did this yesterday. We have a few things downloaded, but these two are the recent ones that we were wanting. Okay, so that is for later, but that is just something you have to have on you. Okay, so back to the project, or back to the presentation. Now that we've downloaded the plugin, you will find it in your downloads, and you will see this. You'll see your sort of plug-out or your Blockout Tools plugin. All right, so now we're going to actually add it to a project. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take our plugin. We're essentially going to 7-zip it. If you don't have 7-zip, download it. If you don't, just use any sort of whatever you're comfortable with to extract a zip file. So all you have to do is you're essentially unzipping a zip folder. However you want to do that is up to you. So what I'm actually going to do is open up my file explorer right here. We're going to go to our downloads, and we're going to see that we have our Blockout Tools plugin. We're actually going to right click that. We're going to go over 7-zip, and we're going to go to extract files, these little 3 dots here. We're going to click it. So this is one way of doing it. There are many ways of doing it, but essentially all we want to do is we want to click these top 3 dots in the top right here, and we're actually going to want to find somewhere to put this. So we're going to want to actually extract this into a specific folder. So we want to extract this into a project. So in Unreal, you essentially just want to have a personal Unreal Engine project. I recommend just doing like the third person template and have that created already. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to find that project. Now for me, I already know where mine is. So I'm going to go to my D drive where I keep everything. That's usually where all your stuff is. And we're going to go to the modeling tool. So I have a thing called the modeling tool right here. I'm going to hit this little arrow and I'm going to expose it. And you won't have a plugins folder. You'll actually have to make a plugins folder. So something you can actually do is if you don't have a plugins folder, you can actually make a new folder. Or not, sorry, not like that. Don't do that. Sorry. You can actually make a new one if you open up, if you go to your file explorer, you can go to the project itself. And then here in the plugins folder, let's say I just didn't have a plugins folder. So let me delete the plugins folder. And then let's say I can essentially make a new folder. We can call it plugins, like that. We can open it up, and we want to put our extract into here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to 7-zip. We are going to essentially go to the D drive. I'm just going to restart this to show you from start to finish. And then we're going to find our modeling tool project, which is this will be whatever you call it. I call it I just call it modeling tool. That's actually the name of the project right here. And then I'm going to go to plugins and I'm just going to hit like OK. Now I'm not going to, well, I'll do it and download and like delete it. But yeah, you just hit OK. It's going to extract. And if I go to my plugins, you'll see that there's a thing here. Now, I actually do not want this because I actually have it purchased and it's installed into my engine. So that's a thing. But this is all you should have to do. This is all you should have to do. So now what we're going to do is, now that we've effectively grabbed a plugins folder and we essentially manually put this plugin in it, it should already be in the project. I would recommend like restarting Unreal and then opening it again. But just like if you have it open already, but just, yeah, put it in. So this is specifically where we were specifying, like, you want to put it in your plugins folder. This is kind of what we were just going over, is extracting the files into the folder. Okay, now this stuff is only relevant if you have the plugin purchased, but you want to add it to your project. So essentially how we would do it here, is if I actually open up my Epic Games launcher, what you're going to find is you're going to find a whole host of libraries and information and plugins and stuff. So we're going to actually find that. So if you've actually purchased the plugin and you've installed it to your engine, here's where we're going to find that. Yeah, if you guys, like I said, if you don't have it purchased and you just did what we did, you're good to go. Like, don't worry about this next step. You are just good. Okay, this is taking kind of a minute to load. There we go. Okay, so in our Epic Games launcher, we're gonna go to our library, and in the library, we're gonna see, if we scroll down, we see like engine versions, my projects, and we're gonna see the vault. Now here, you're gonna want to type in block. Now I don't see it because it's actually open in a project. Because if I close this, it'll magically pop up. So I don't want to close it and reopen it because it's gonna take ages. But you'll actually see, just like you see here, you will see like this, and you'll essentially be able to add it to a project. I think the actual button that it says is install to engine. If I go back, whoops. If I go back to the presentation, it will say install to engine right here. So then you're going to install it to the current version. And then what you're going to do is click the installed plugins, and that'll confirm that you have it. So if I actually go to my Epic Games launcher and I go to my 5.4 installed plugins, I actually already have it in here and it's running, which is why it's not popping up. So if we minimize that, that is how we're actually going to install it to the engine. So if you have it, that's how we do it. It is now time to access it. Okay, so we're going to open up our Unreal Engine project and we're just going to see what's going on. So here is my Unreal Engine project. This is just like a blank project that has, very little in it. So if we go to edit at the top left, we go down to plugins, you will be able to see every plugin in the project, both activated and deactivated. We're going to type in the search bar up top, we're going to type in block. So block for Blockout tools. And you're going to see that there's going to be a plugin here. You can enable that plugin with this little checkbox, and it'll ask you to restart the engine. Now, since it's already here, I don't need to restart the engine, but it'll just do a quick restart and then it'll be enabled. So that's how you can confirm that your plugin is now in the engine. Okay, so now that we have that, we actually, remember, we downloaded two things. We downloaded both an image and the plugin. So now we have the plugin in the engine. Let's actually locate it. So how we're going to use this plugin is we're going to grab this little plus arrow. It's like this plus sign on the cube, the quickly add to project button, and we're just going to click it. It's going to give us a drop down of a bunch of options, even Blockout tools being right here. But just for now, we're going to do the place actors panel. So the place actors panel is going to give us this like nice little side panel that has a bunch of stuff. And at the top, you actually have a bunch of different stuff, right? So we're actually going to be looking for the Blockout tools part of this. And here is our tool. This has absolutely everything that the Blockout tools has to offer. So before we get into this, what we're going to do is we're now going to make our image guide. This is sort of for the activity portion of the video. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the selection mode. We're going to click it and we're going to have a little drop down. We're going to go to the modeling mode, and this modeling mode will give us all sorts of really cool options. We don't really care about anything here. We actually only care about this little rectangle mode. So we're going to click rectangle and we're going to have a bunch of settings, but notice our mouse cursor is going to have like a little rectangle flying around. So this will do this until we place the rectangle. I highly recommend you put your grid snaps to 50 if you haven't already. This will essentially snap the mesh to the 50 centimeter increments, which is really important for what we're going to be using this for. So we're just going to like place this down, and we honestly don't need to change anything about it. We just need a rectangle. We're going to hit accept. So now that we have a rectangle, last but not least, we do actually want to change the scale of this rectangle. So in your details panel, we're going to go down to our transform, and we're going to change the scale of it. Now, the actual red, or the x-axis, or this little red arrow, we want to change the scale of this axis to 41. So 41, hit enter, it's going to stretch out. And then we want to change the green, or the y-axis, or this little arrow. We want to change the green to be 30. And now, if you hold down the right mouse button and you back up, or essentially you hit S, right, you back up, you will see that now we have this little plane. Now, it may be oriented this way, I'm not really sure, but when we slap on the image, it'll make sense. Okay, so now that we have our plane, let's grab our image. So go to your File Explorer on the bottom, like we had earlier. We're going to click it. We're going to go to our downloads. And remember, we downloaded the Blockout Tools plugin, but we also downloaded this really nifty PNG. What we're going to do is move our File Explorer up so that we can see the content browser in the background. So if you don't already have the content browser open, I have it docked so it's always open. But grab your PNG, click and drag it, and just pop it in the content browser like that. And now it'll import it. And now we have our image. We can close out of our downloads, and we can actually get rid of the modeling mode, so we can go back to selection mode because we just don't need it anymore. So now what we're going to do is we're going to click and drag our new image onto the plane. We're just going to let go, and just like that, it magically is imported. It looks good, and if you get close enough, you'll see that these colored lines align perfectly to the grid, like perfectly. All right, so now that we have our activity sort of floor mat, if you can think of it like that, what we're actually going to do is we're going to use our Blockout tools, and we're going to make a little house. Okay, so here are the 4 parts of this that I designed. This is the top view of the house. So if you were looking at an object from the top, this is the top view of the house, and these are the dimensions of it. So 17 meters or 1700 centimeters. By 12 meters or 1200 centimeters. This is useful because Unreal Engine uses meters and centimeters as a unit. All right, so let's look at the color code. So the color code, if it is a yellow, it's a doorway. If it's red, it's windows. If it is a gray unit, it is just the color. It's essentially just this. This is just a standard unit. This is the size. It's like essentially what one cube on the grid looks like. And these are the walls. If it's green, it's a wall. So let's actually build this. Now we have the metrics, and the metrics are essentially, here's what a doorway is going to look like. This is like real true size and shape of our doorway. And this is the real true size and shape of a window. And then this is the front view of the house. If you were to look at the house from the front, this is what it would look like. And notice it is 4 meters tall. Okay, cool. So let's actually make this house. So we're gonna go grab our place actors panel again, right here. And we're gonna go to our blockout tools. And what we're actually gonna do is we're just going to click and drag our blockout box. And we're going to drag it on the mat. Notice how it gets flush with the mat. We're just gonna move it near this like standard unit over here. And we're just gonna let go. Now, first things first, you will notice something's a little different about this cube than the normal cube we're used to using. When you have any sort of mesh, if I click on the mat, you're going to notice we have this one gizmo. We don't have anything else. It's just one gizmo. But with the blockout tool, it's actually a blueprint. If you look at this, this is actually the blueprint icon. So what that means is this is a special kind of mesh. It is a mesh with some functionality to it, which is what makes it a tool. So we have the normal gizmo that we can use to sort of move our cube around. And we actually have this other gizmo. If we click on it, we actually have another gizmo, which is called box size. So what this means is that we can actually reshape our box with the second gizmo. So think of this as this is where the cube starts, and this is where the cube ends. So from corner to corner, this is like the very start, and this is the very end. What this means is if we needed to make something, if I move this out of the way a little bit, if we needed something to be 1 by 1 by 1, or in this case, 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters, if we need it to be 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters big, we can do that. We can actually go to our details panel, and you'll see blockout box. It should come out like this, where it's like not exposed. So we just click on this little arrow, and it'll expose it. So we need this to be 50 by 50 and just another 50. We just need this to be 50 centimeters as a cube. So what we can do is we can actually go to the details. We can type 50, 50, 50. And now we have ourselves a 50 by 50 by 50 cube. We can now move this on to that and know that that is our standard unit. So what this means is that anywhere that we move this cube, it'll line up perfectly on this little mat that we've made. So let's do that. All right, now I'm going to copy this over to the walls section. So we're going to hold down Alt on the keyboard, and we're just going to copy, we're going to make a copy of this. So note that the walls, this fits into the wall, but it says that they're essentially 400 centimeters tall. So that's all we're going to do. We're going to make this 400 centimeters tall. And you may be wondering, well, how tall is this? Well, each of these little cubes is 50 centimeters. So what that means is we need 8 of these little cubes to make it 400. Or we can go into the details panel again. We notice that this is the height value. We can actually expose the box size, and you can see the 3 axes, right? So we know that Z, in this case, Z is actually the height axis, or the blue is the height axis. So we actually want to take this value and we want to make it 400. So now we know this is a 400 centimeter tall wall. Cool. All right, so now let's make the doorway and let's make the window, because houses have doors and they have windows. So let's do that. In the blockout tools, I want you to grab a blockout doorway tool. We're going to click it and drag it over. Now what's going to happen is they kind of look similar, but they're not the same size. So let's make them the same size. So I recommend essentially clicking the rotate, or if you're like me who likes to use the binds, hit E on your keyboard. So if you hit E, it'll actually pull out this little rotator. I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees so that it's like sideways, so it's in line with the picture. And then we're going to rotate the top down 90 degrees. And now it's like sort of in line with it. Now, for the sake of visualization, I don't like the Z fighting. So I'm going to go back to the translate mode, or W on your keyboard. And we're just going to grab this little arrow and we're just going to drag it up once. Now remember, everything that we're moving is moving 50 centimeters at a time, because we're using 50 centimeter grid snaps. So everything we move is just like really perfect. It just works. So now that we have this lined up, let's line up the gizmo or the start point in this corner, and let's move the end point over here to the other corner. So now, if we look at it from the top, it's like perfectly in line with the doorway, right? If we move it down, if we click on the mesh again and we move it down one, notice how it's like, it's almost perfectly in line. But we have this little top piece, so how do we get that? Well, in the details panel, once again, I'm just going to minimize them and then pull them back out. The blockout doorway will actually have more stats, but it also has a top thickness and a side thickness. So, for example, if I made the side thickness instead of 50, if I made it 100, what would that look like? It would bring it in 100. It would bring it in like that. Now, if I'm just going to control Z that, if I make this 50, let's say the top thickness, let's say I make that 100. Well, it's going to bring this, essentially, this is 100 units, right? So each of these squares is 50 units. Now it's 100. So this is now the perfect size of doorway that we want. Let's hit E again, and let's rotate this back up. Let's hit W and kind of put it snug with the mat, kind of like that. You can even move it forward one. And know that these two doorways, this doorway now is perfectly sized the way it should be. So finally, what we're going to do is we're going to make our window. Now the window is very similar to the door. So we're going to go to our place actors panel. We're going to go down to our blockout window. We're going to click and drag it onto the map. Now same process we did before. We can actually rotate it 90 degrees. We can actually rotate it another 90 degrees. And then we can hit W. We can move it into this gizmo in the corner. And then we can click the other gizmo and move it to the other corner, like that. So now we see, okay, we are perfectly in line. The bottom here like lines up perfectly with the red. But we now have these other two squares we need to cover. So what we can do is go to our top thickness, and like we did before, we did 100. So let's try that. Okay, well, it's progress, right? But we still have another 50 units to go. So let's go to 150. And just like that, we have ourselves a nice lower accurate window. So now we're going to rotate our window up, and it just works. So now we have all the puzzle pieces we need. We have a wall section, a doorway, and a window, right? So let's make a house. All right, so first things first, the walls. Of this house that we're going to make, the walls, these seem like a really easy place to start because it's just a wall. There's no windows, no doors, because if we look at the color code, the yellow is a doorway. So the player is actually supposed to walk through the yellow lines. They can only fit in this little gap because this is a doorway. And we know that the green is the wall, so the player can't walk through these walls. We also know that the red, they can't necessarily walk through it, but they can see through it because it's a window. So what this means is we're just going to grab our green, our little wall section. We're going to hold down Alt on our keyboard, and we're just going to copy it. So now we can actually grab these two axes. I recommend that you grab the red and the green axes. Don't ever grab this little ball here because it moves on all axes and you have no control. And unless you mean to, the height. If we're trying to move something laterally, we only want, essentially at any given time, you only want to be grabbing maybe 2 axes. You usually don't want to grab 3. Just grab 2. So in this case, I actually just want 2 axes. I want to move it around in 2D. So we're doing that. Okay, so now you may be thinking, how do we stretch this block outward this way? How do we make it longer? Well, we've been doing it, right? We've been using this gizmo. Now, normally we would probably want to hit R on the keyboard and pull out our scaler and scale the wall this way. But notice the gizmo starts stretching. You shouldn't be doing that. So Control Z. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the box and I'm just going to move it. So now the start point is in this corner. The end point is in this corner. And if you notice, it's right on top of our map. So this is our wall. So now what we can do is we can actually hit Alt, hold down Alt again, and copy a wall section to the other side. So now we actually have 2 walls of a house. So now what I'm going to recommend that we do is let's put in our doorways now. So Let's grab a doorway. Let's hold down Alt, and let's move the doorway close to one of these yellow doorways. So if we move the doorway in line, notice that we are not talking about the side borders of the door. We're talking about this yellow corresponds to this gap in the doorway, because we don't care about the entire door frame. We actually just care about the gap that the player can fit in. So if we line this up, the gap in the doorway is exactly the same as this yellow bar. That means we're good to go. Let's pull it over, and now we have a doorway. Let's repeat this process, rinse and repeat. Let's copy this door and move it over here. And notice you can actually just drag it right on. It actually just takes no time. It just works because we did the heavy lifting back here to make a standard door. Everywhere we use a doorway, we can just copy and paste the door, and it's going to work perfectly. So now, ooh, look at that. There's a rotated door. So we can actually pull out our rotational tool by hitting E. We can actually hold down Alt and actually copy rotate, so we can make a copy of it while we rotate it. So now it's a little bit back, right? So what you can do is then hit your W key and move it forward. And now you've got this like little doorway intersection. Now what you can do is, now that this is oriented sideways, we can copy this door out and we can put it on these ones. So now it's just a matter of like filling the space with doorways. And you'll know that this is the gap that we're looking for. Cool. All right, so now let's add our windows. Now another thing, like with the doors, notice that the red is the gap. It is sort of this gap area, and the side lengths are green. So that means we only care about the inside gap, and these are essentially wall sections. So we're going to grab our window, hold down Alt, and we're going to copy it over here. So I'm going to move it to the bottom left at first, and we're just going to line it up. So once again, just like the door, how we're actually lining the gap of the door with the yellow, we're lining the gap of the window to the red. So does this look like it's in line? I think so. So it's good. So let's copy it over. And we're just going to place this like behind it. Now notice this is only 3 units wide. So what that means is we can take our windowsill, and even though it's 4 units and this is 3 units, what we can do is we can actually grab this gizmo. We can make it 1 unit smaller. We can click it again to get this normal gizmo. And then we can just align it with the gap, right? So as long as we know how wide it is, we can just kind of make it happen. And now we got windows. Let's recreate this on the other side. We're going to grab this window, and notice it already kind of works because it's 3 units and this is 3 units, so we're good. Copy this over. So now it's 3 units. This is 6 units. So let's actually, I recommend that you anchor your starting point, because whenever you move this, it's actually going to go outward or inward, but this point won't move. This point will. So I would like you to anchor the left side because it won't move. Make sure the left side is good. And the right side is all you have to change, right? So we just make it as wide as we need it, like this. This is as wide as we need it. And then we can just sort of pull it over. And then the very last wall, we anchor it where we want to, start. We grab the gizmo and we can shorten it to now we have everything in line. And we pull it in. So just like that, we now have all of the doorways and all the windows of our house built. Now all that remain on the mat, if we look at it from the top down, all that remain are these like green strips. And if we remember, green strips are just wall sections. So that means we just have to add walls. So let's do that. So I'm going to grab my wall section. I'm going to essentially hold down Alt to copy it, and I'm just going to move it into this little crevice here. Now remember, I'm grabbing 2 axes at once. I recommend grabbing 2 so you can move it around in 2D and just kind of snap it where you want it. So now that we have this little section here, let's copy it and let's grab here. So like once again, we anchor where we want it to start. We grab the gizmo and we bring it to where we want it to end. All right, let's click the section again. Let's copy it and let's move it over. it just kind of works out. So that's cool. Let's copy it. And oh no, we're blocking the window. So grab the gizmo and notice where we start and where we want to end. So fill the gap. And just like that, we've finished the wall. So let's rinse and repeat this process for everything else. So here, we want to make this a little shorter. Cool. So click on it again. And this is a thing, I didn't really explain this, but I've been doing it. So notice that when you click on this gizmo, if you want to go back, simply click the mesh again. So click, 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 click. So that's how I'm alternating between these two gizmos. If you try to like scale, you can't actually scale or rotate from this gizmo or anything. It won't let you. Now you can technically do it if you like rotate first and then click the gizmo. It'll show it, but it won't actually do anything. So you have to go back to your translate and then you can move it, right? So let's grab our wall piece. We're going to click it again. We're going to move it over. We're going to go move it over this way. We're going to grab our gizmo and we're going to move it over. We're going to click it again, copy it over, and just fill in the gaps, right? We're going to take our wall section and we're just going to copy it. And once again, move it on 2 axes and just kind of place it. Copy it over. And now we actually can copy this over again. And we have just like a little one by one section. We can do that. Click it again, drag it over. So at this point, this should be pretty routine. It's just a matter of like literally just clicking and moving the wall around. So now let's say here we notice that we might instinctively rotate it into place. Now you actually don't have to do that. What's really cool is if you grab this, once again, we know it wants to start and end, right? So let's move the starting point to be here, and let's simply move the end point here. So you can actually move it like this. So you can just simply move the end point where we want it. And then we can copy it over. And just like that, we've made ourselves a little Lego house, right? So let's actually playtest our house and let's see how it feels. So we're going to now right click in front of the door. We're going to scroll down to play from here. And this will load up a play in editor. We're going to click to tab in and we see we have a house. So I'm going to walk in and feel the space. Does it feel like it's big enough? Well, from the first person, absolutely. This feels like it's a small house, but it's definitely, the doors are big enough. I can fit in them. I can jump with like plenty of room. So I can access everything in here, and I know that the scale feels right. I can see outside the windows nice and clearly, and they kind of obstruct me from getting out. So yeah, I can see outside the window, and it's really nice. It looks really nice out there, you know. So with that being said, that is our activity. So now we're going to go back to the presentation here, and let's talk a little bit about, this is just what we did before, how we added it to the project. Let's talk a little bit about the Blockout tools. So we've already done all this, so don't worry about it. So here we actually have the anatomy of the blueprint. The actual SM cube that you're used to, it's very similar to the cube that we've used. The difference is the normal cube we use doesn't have this gizmo, right? This is purely because it's a blockout tool. So what you're actually going to notice is that this cube has those 2 gizmos, and when you click on this gizmo, you can move it like we did before. And this gizmo doesn't just scale it at random, it actually scales with respect to your snap. So if I go back into the engine and I grab a cube that we have here, in one of our blockout cubes, and I click the scale, essentially the size gizmo, and I move it around, notice it only snaps every 1 unit, and that's because every 1 unit is 50. If I change this to like 100 snap, every time this snaps, it's actually going to move 2 units. right? So notice that if we go to the beginning, it's 1. After 1 snap, it becomes 3. So it's snapping 2 units now. So we don't want that, right? We want to essentially have you control over every unit. Now, similarly, if we wanted to make it really fine, let's go down to 10 units. So now we can like do these little sub-squares. So instead of going this one full square, now we can do like little tiny sub-squares. The magic numbers for this thing are 50 and 10, essentially. So 50 and 10 are the magic numbers to move this thing around nice and clean. All right, cool. So let's talk a little bit about the details panel. Now we did kind of cover this briefly, but we actually have a few options. We actually have the blockout material and the blockout box. So in the details panel of the blockout tool, you will be able to see the sort of, I would say, stats of the cube. So if we actually go back into engine, you'll notice that we have, like we did before, the box size. You can actually change like this to 1,000. And now it's like super long, right? So you can notice the values down here will change dynamically to how I'm scaling this thing. So that is how that works. Now I'm going to cover something really cool because this is something that is very helpful, very useful. I'm just going to cover it now. I didn't go over this in the presentation, but we'll talk about it now. The blockout material is actually really, really cool. So if you notice this like orange and white part of it, it's sort of just to show that it's like a construction thing. The color doesn't necessarily matter, but sometimes it does. So what you can actually do is you can actually change this to a custom material if you have one. You can actually change the color. So if I choose the orange, I can actually dynamically change the color instance by instance, right? So these are still orange, but this specific blueprint is actually now blue. Similarly, let's say I wanted to make this look like a Minecraft dirt block. Well, I need to go get like a brown color. So let's go get brown, like a dark brown. But now there's like a grid on it, right? So what's cool is we can actually turn off the grid. So this is actually important because sometimes you want things that are scaled to show how many units tall they are. So this is like a sense of scale in the level. But sometimes, like if you have a stairway, it's really messy. Or even like a curved surface, it gets really messy. So you actually sometimes just want to turn off the grid because you don't really care about the fact that it is, you know, a really, like you don't care that it's scaled properly or not. So in this case, we just have like a normal block and we can still move it around same way with the colors. Now what's really cool is you can also have this world aligned option. So let's turn on the grid. World aligned means that no matter where we move this box, if I actually turn off my snaps, you'll see this in action. The grid will actually align to the world. So even though this thing's position is like really, really off, notice how the grid is perfectly aligned to the world. So if we rotate this in some weird way, the grid is still completely like clean. If we turn off world aligned, you'll notice it'll snap back to like relative to the object. So we definitely, let's say we turn these both off and we just kind of keep what we got. Actually, so the next options, let's turn on our grid. We can actually change the grid size. So instead of 100, let's say we want 50. We can now make these grids even smaller. If we want, we can make it, 200. And now we have really big grids. So maybe we want a different kind of scale depending on our thing, right? I think 100 is fine. You definitely want to keep it at 100, but sometimes you may want to change that. Now you also have checker luminance and roughness. So checker luminance is at 0.3. Let's see what happens if we put it at 0. You'll notice that it doesn't have any of the alternating colors. It just has this. But if we turn it to 1, well, now it's really bright. So what this means is that essentially these tiles, every other tile is either going to be essentially how white is it? Is it like 0 or is it 100% white? Roughness is the same way. Roughness is actually how reflective this material is. So if I turn off the grid, you'll notice like at a distance, it's a little reflective. The light's kind of like reflecting it a little bit, even here. the yellow is actually reflecting. So if I turn the roughness to 0 and we make it perfectly metallic, you'll notice that this thing is almost like a mirror. It's really reflective. And depending on the material, you might want that. But generally for block mesh, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want this roughness to either be the default of 0.3, so it doesn't reflect super hard, or we can even change it to 1 and say, I don't want you to reflect at all. I just want like a matte, cube with no light really reflecting off of it. So either option's fine. But yeah, this is just like personal preference. And then we also have top color. So top color is an option where if you turn it off, you only use this one color, right? However, if we turn on top color, now we have two colors. We essentially have whatever's on top and we have this. So by changing the top color, we can now customize whatever's on top. So let's say, like I said, we wanted to make like a Minecraft dirt block. So let's get ourselves like a nice green. And then let's grab the color for the dirt. Make it like a nice dirt color. And now we have a Minecraft block. Look at that. So now we, let's say we make the roughness 1 because I don't want it reflecting. And now we've got ourselves a slice of dirt. And in block mesh, this might actually be a good thing, right? This can like show the grass in your level. If that's something you want to communicate, you can. And then finally, this is the custom material. So if you say you want to use a custom material, then that's where you put in your custom material. I mean, hell, I could probably drag this in there. And now we have like a really cursed box that is like really weird with like the matte material we just used. It's so strange. But you can do that. This is an option. I don't recommend it, but it is an option. So I'm going to delete this cube because we just butchered it. And I'm just going to copy and paste another default sized one, or another default cube, and call it good. Look at that. Awesome. All right, so finally, we're just going to kind of speed run through our... we're going to kind of speed run through the rest of our presentation, and we'll kind of call it there. So finally, we have cones. Cones are really cool because they have this thing called cone quality. So cone quality is a way to sort of say that it has a number of sides. Now notice that the cone quality 0 means that your cone is essentially like a hexagonal cone. If I go back to the engine, you will actually see what I mean by this. So if I actually go to my tools and I go to my blockout cone and I drag it into this scene, you'll see that it's actually a hexagon. So by going into the details panel, I will be able to change the quality from 0 to 1. And now it's like a little bit more like a cone. I highly recommend as a level designer, if you're going to be using anything circular like this, use quality 1 or 2. 2 is like pushing it, but quality 1 is generally like that's enough to tell me that this is actually a cone. If you do quality 0, it's really hard to tell that that's like a cone. Like you can kind of abstract that that's a cone, but like in practice in your level, it may not feel like a cone at all if you need it to be a cone. Overall, it shouldn't be an issue. Just make sure generally you don't want to go to like from like quality 2 or 3 because it makes it really smooth, which means it has more triangles, which means it's more expensive. So stick to quality 1 and I think you'll be good. Also, remember the material, how I said it kind of looks really wonky on curved things? This grid is all over the place. So all you have to do is go to your material and just say, I don't want the grid anymore. And then maybe you can say, oh, I don't actually want the top color either, because the top color is what's making it like weird, like a weird white color. I don't want the top color. I just want like a cylinder, or sorry, a little cone. That's all I want. And you can do that. You can change the color of your cone. Cool. All right. So back to the presentation. Just think of the quality as like how rounded is it? What is the quality of the circle? So next, we've got ourselves a really cool corner curved tool. So this is really good for anything that is a circle that you need a sort of a section of a circle. So in this case, you need a corner of a circle or a quarter circle. This is good for like if you want to round the edge of things, you can do that. And they also have a really cool feature called is inner. So if is inner is false, you have this circular cut. And if is inner is true, if you tick it to true, it'll now make this thing like curved. So essentially you'll have the outward curve and the inward curve. This is really useful if we go into the project. This is really useful for like doorways if we want to make like an archway, right? So let's grab our corner curve tool. Let's drag it into the scene. Let's rotate it so that we can see it a little better. So I'm just gonna, actually I can just look at it like this. That'll be better. So what's cool is we can have everything in here, same way. And we can actually say is inner. So notice how that changes it. So what we can actually do is if we make this, whoops, almost did that. If we can actually, technically we can scale these kind of like this if we really want. Because there is no gizmo that's gonna like, we can't click on a gizmo to resize it. Although if you do choose to scale it, these values will no longer be accurate. So probably don't scale it. Just say, I want the height to be like 50, right? So now it's 50. What you can do is you can actually make it even, we can make the radius 50 as well. It's just a tiny little thing. Now we can rotate it 90 degrees and we can move it around next to this door and move it up. And now we kind of have it in the corner of the door. And all we have to do is click is inner. And now we got like a tiny little archway. Let's say we wanted it to be a bit more extreme. Because like, so if I copy it over, I right click, I hit transform and I mirror the X, it just sort of reverses it. Now you kind of have like a rounded doorway. And that kind of feels nicer, right? But let's say we wanted to make it a bit more extreme. Like we wanted like a full-on curve. Well, the radius, we can set this to 100. And same thing here, the one we created, let's set this to 100. And now we actually have an archway. So this archway is constructed of these wall sections and then this little corner piece. Same thing, we could also move this to the window if we wanted. And you could kind of have like a weird window. Yeah, I mean, hell, you can have even like a little archway like that. We can turn the quality to 1, quality to 1. And now we've kind of created like this spiked arch. Isn't that cool? Pretty awesome. So you can kind of do some really fun architecture stuff. Pretty easy with this, actually. All right, back to the presentation we go. Okay, so next things next, we got the railing. Now we're just gonna speed run through these because we're getting a bit long in the video. So the railing is actually going to feature 2 sections with 120 centimeter length sections by default. So what this is telling you is to say that when you place down a railing, it's going to have a number of section pieces. So 2 sections means 1 section, 2 sections. And then the length will essentially be the length of that section. So in this case, by default, it's 120. I usually like to go 100 because it's nice and clean. So that's cool. And then you can also have a bunch of other really cool features. So another feature of it is the skew elevation feature. So essentially what you're doing is you're saying, hey, I want the final section to go up this much, this many centimeters. So what's cool is now you have this thing actually going over and up. So now it's at an elevation and it looks cool. Here we also have other types of railings. So we have open and closed. So the open will be nice and open. The closed will kind of have this big thing here. Now this looks really modern and metal, but realize that you can also block mesh these for like wooden fences. If we have wooden fences in our level and we want to fence things off, we can actually do that with these. Here we have the blockout sphere. It also has the sphere quality thing, which is because it's rounded, it has a quality modifier. And what's cool about this sphere is it gives you this radius, but it also says is hemisphere. So if by default the is hemisphere is false, so it's just a sphere. But if you actually enable it, you will actually cut it in half. So now you have access to a half sphere very easily, which is incredible. That's a very powerful tool. To be able to give like a rounded top to things cylindrically is really, really cool. Next, we have our blockout stairs curved. I believe this is actually the last thing we're really going to cover. And then I'll show you some extra stuff in the engine here. But this stairway actually has all these settings. We have number of steps, stairs angle, if it's counterclockwise or not, if it has a height, radius, width, and then also the type. So here we actually have the type. If it has a box or sloped or closed, they will look like this respectively. And that's the end. I'm actually going to go to the end in engine and show you more things, but that's the end of the presentation. So The stairs curved, if I drag the stairs curved into the project, you'll see that they exist. And I can change the box to sloped. I can change the box or the sloped to closed. I usually like to keep sloped on because it makes the underside smooth. But essentially what's important to note here is the angle. So we have number of steps. Well, it's 10 by default, so let's change it to like 20. Let's change it to like 50. We can get a lot of steps. Now, you wouldn't want this many steps. Ideally, you would want maybe like, in this case, yeah, 10 or 20 seems like, 20 even seems like a lot. I think 10 seems like good. This seems like a normal stairway. But look what happens when you change the stairs angle. It's 90 degrees, and that means that this is a 90-degree curve. So let's actually change this to like, I don't know, if it's a spiral staircase, 720 degrees. Now it's going to look a little weird because now the stairs, there's still only 10 stairs. So if we changed our angle from 90 degrees to 720 degrees, that means we essentially multiplied our angle by a factor of 8. So let's multiply our steps by that same factor of 8. So instead of 10, we're going to go 80 steps. And now that looks more normal, albeit it's a bit short, but the steps will be actually normal. So if we want to change the height, now we just got to change the height of the stairs. So from 100, maybe let's double it. Let's go 200. Okay, it's looking a little better, but it's still a bit short. So maybe let's go like 500. That's looking more normal, right? That's looking more like a spiral staircase. Maybe we can even go like 600. That's like a very valid staircase. Okay. So now what we can do is, let's say we wanted to change the inner radius. So the inner radius is the distance between the center point of the stairs and the first like corner of the step. So if we change it from 50, let's go to 100. Notice it's actually going to move further away. And so now we kind of have like a wider swing of the stairs. Now, if we grab a cylinder, a blockout cylinder, it also is a hexagon, same thing. We are going to make this thing quality, I'll say 2, just for demonstration. And we can move this thing to the center point of the stairs, like so. Well, we know that the center radius is actually, the inner radius is 100, which means the actual diameter is much more. So since it's 100, we're going to make the cylinder radius 100. So now that they have the same radius, you can kind of see how it like actually wraps around the cylinder. And it should be like not super snug, but relatively snug within reason. So maybe if you don't want any gaps, maybe we say it's like 110. And now it's like super snug. So now we can change the height. Let's say the height is like 1,000 tall. Well, now you've actually got like your stairway and it's like wrapping around like a spire. And then if we take our steps, we change our width of the steps to maybe like 300 so there's enough room. You will now notice that it's like a nice sizable stair. We can even make them a little taller, saying that maybe like one full rotation should be about, I don't know, like 1 story high. So maybe we can say, okay, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So maybe we make it 8. So let's do 800. 800 is our height. And that looks actually pretty normal. That looks like a pretty normal spiral staircase. So yeah. And then what can happen is we can actually then playtest our spiral staircase. And if we look around, yeah, these look and feel like spiral steps. This feels like it should. Very cool. All right. So remember, the cylinder doesn't have anything really super weird about it. It has the quality and it has height and radius. That's it. Don't worry about round size. We never touch that. I know what it does. It just is something that there's no benefit in really turning off that I've ever found. Okay, cool. In addition to steps, let's talk about linear stairs. So let's grab our blockout stairs linear. Let's drag it into the scene. We're going to move this next to the wall. And like we said before, this gizmo is the start point. This gizmo is the end point. So let's just sort of drag this outward. Now the steps are going to get really huge, like really huge. But all we care about right now is making sure our end point is like at the top of the house. So now, just like we had this problem when we scaled this up, our steps got really, really wonky. So same thing here, we just need more steps. So we're going to go down to our number of steps, and we're going to make this like, I don't know, let's try 20. Okay, they still look a little chunky, maybe like 30. 30 looks a bit small, but generally, yeah, it feels okay. And then we can actually make it wider, right? So we can make the size of the stair like 200, and now we make it wider. Look at that. Now, I recommend if you're going to make stairs in your block mesh, definitely turn off the grid and make it like a nice, easy color. So like I like to make it more white. I personally like to make it as white as I can, and then say screw the top color and just like have a white staircase. Because you don't need to know that this staircase is like perfectly scaled. You just need to know that it like they're stairs. And then we can have close. Look at that. Stairway. Same thing with the thing. We have we have closed, we have sloped, where it's kind of like a slide. And then we have box. So look at that. We got stairs. Pretty awesome. Okay. I think I will show you one more tool. They actually have a corner ramp. It's really cool. Cylinder works really great. Cone is awesome. But there's one more tool that is really, really powerful, and I want you guys to know it. And then we'll call it good. So the Blockout tube is a pretty rad tube. This thing is very powerful. Okay. It is actually the only tool that uses splines. So I'm going to drag this onto like this grid over here. We're just going to sort of isolate it. We're going to keep it on its own. So this bad boy is comprised of sections, angle, radius, height, thickness, and alignment. So let's talk about what that means. The sections are how many spline points make it. So notice how like it's a really rough tube. So think of sections as their sections are just like the quality, where it's like how rounded is it. So if I go to 16 and I double it, that's going to start looking more like a tube. Hell, I can go to 100 sections and it looks very smooth, albeit don't ever do that. So we're just going to go like 16. Now, because we have like a tube, we also have the radius. We also have the angle. So the angle is 360, which means it's a full circle. But if we wanted, let's say we only wanted like half, like 180 degrees, let's do that. 180 degrees. Now, a caveat to this is understand that your sections are still 16, but now it's like half the angle. So we're going to want to half the sections as well. So now we've got ourselves a really nice little like semicircle. We can now change the radius from 50. Let's say we want like 200. We want to make it like really big. We can also then change our height. So the height will essentially be how long it is. So let's say 200. And now this is our height. We can also now change our thickness. And instead of 10, let's say we want it to be like 50. So now we have like 50 degrees here and it's being rounded, which is pretty awesome. Next thing, this is the last thing we can kind of mess around with, is we have something called the alignment. So the alignment is essentially where does the mesh go with respect to the spline point. So if we go to the center, it'll actually center this on the spline. If we hit right, it'll actually go to the right of the spline. So this is important because it changes the mesh completely. If we go from right to left, there's a big difference. This is really good for like which point you're trying to align with. It seems like you don't even know where you'd use that, but as you start messing around with this and placing it, you'll notice that it solves a lot of problems. Now, the last really, really awesome feature of this that I want you to know is really good for the architecture that we're doing is we can sort of make these really cool like castle things. Make some really cool castle things, but we can also use this tube as sort of like a wall. So I'm going to use this tube as sort of like a wall to sort of make this a massive chamber. So we know that the center point is like located in here. So I'm just going to get my camera lined up. I'm just going to grab this tool and I'm just going to bring the center point to be the same spot right here. So now what we can do is let's change our tools. Let's change the radius to like 500. It's a bit too much. Let's go to 400. That seems like super snug. So I want this to be, let's say, 360 degrees. I want it to like fully encompass it. And then since we doubled, we have to double. So let's do 16 sections. Honestly, we can probably go more. We can probably do like 32 sections. Make it nice and smooth. And then we can actually change the height. So let's make this 1,000. And now we sort of have this like chamber, right? So now we actually gave ourselves like a curved wall that works beautifully with our spiral staircase. And this is good for castles, right? Like we use cylinders and like hollowed out cylinders all the time with their architecture. So this is really nice. And one really cool feature of this at the top is if you actually click on the mesh again, you can actually click on these little sections. So I think you have to like double click it, but you can actually highlight these little sections and then pull them up. So this is really good for the architecture if you wanted to like control click all of the alternating sections, move them up slightly, and then you kind of have this like castle feature. You can do that. So the tube tool has a lot of really cool functionality and it just kind of works, right? Like this looks fucking awesome. So thank you very much for watching. This is essentially the conclusion of the workshop. I highly recommend you go in and you start messing around with the tool in your personal projects. I recommend doing like an architecture study of like a building and making stuff with it. So I'll give you an example of what that looks like real quick. I have an arch study that I did. And in the arch study, I actually replicated like a college campus, like part of it, at least what the image could see. And I replicated this with the Blockout tools. And the white little trim is literally just like me making the material white. And what's also cool is you can, whenever we cover the modeling tool, you'll be able to even model like these little sections here and make them look kind of nice. And even these archways. So yeah, this is essentially some of the things you can do with the Blockout tools. And this doesn't take very long at all. Actually, it only took me probably an hour or two to kind of just like figure it out. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. We are just at an hour. I hope that this has been helpful to you. I hope that this helps any level designers or anyone else who's curious learn the Blockout tools and kind of the cool things we can do with it. And I'll catch you guys in the next workshop. Peace.